In the heart of a serene valley, where wildflowers danced on the breeze and the golden sun dipped below the horizon, a farm thrived, nurtured by a man named Eamon. Every day, Eamon rose with the sun, tending to his fields with hands calloused by years of labor. His laughter echoed through the rolling hills, a sound so bright it seemed to harmonize with the birds' morning songs. But not everyone saw the beauty of his world as he did. On one fateful evening, a gathering of shadows crept through the woods that flanked Eamon's land. They were rogues, hungry for a life they didn't earn, driven by a desperate need for what they saw as an easy gold. With twisted thoughts and eyes glinting with greed, they approached, plotting. They admired Eamon's sprawling crops, rich and ripe. "Those fields would feed us well," one murky figure whispered, his voice a mix of envy and hunger. As the sun fell into darkness, lighting small lanterns by their campfire, the rogues made their plan. They smoothed their weapons, a mix of rusted blades and wooden clubs amidst murmurs of excitement. They had struck luck before, stealing from travelers and townsfolk bound for more prosperous places. But this time, the target was daunting. Eamon was no simple man. He had a fire in him, forged through years of sweat and toil. To them, he was just a farmer misplaced in a world that favored cunning and quick reflexes. Meanwhile, Eamon prepared for bed, unaware of the storm gathering around him. He filled his last wooden bucket with water, glancing towards the fields where moonlight shimmered on dew-kissed plants. Eamon's heart was tethered to his land. Each inch of earth symbolized a part of him, his hopes and dreams embedded deep in the soil. As he locked the door of his cozy cottage, his gut twisted into a knot, sensing the unsettled air outside. But he shrugged it off. Tonight would be like any other. As the moon hung high and the stars twinkled like old memories, the rogues slipped silently through the shadows. The leader, a man named Garrick, tiptoed across the border of Eamon's land. "Tonight we feast," he hissed, his eyes wide with anticipation, barely able to contain the thrill of impending chaos. The others nodded, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they moved like ghosts toward the fields. But Eamon, for all his simplicity, had a deep connection with the land. He felt the uneven pulse of the earth beneath his feet and the change that permeated the night air. A chill ran through him, instinct warning him of imminent danger. He peered through the frosted window, catching sight of dark figures near the edge of his crops. His heart pounded like a drum, each beat urging him to act. Grabbing a sturdy pitchfork, Eamon stepped outside, the cold biting at his skin. The rogues were emerging from the shadows, their laughter echoing in the stillness, but Eamon's resolve hardened. His voice boomed across the field, a sudden blaze cutting through their reckless excitement. The rogues froze, then scrambled to shield their intentions under a facade of bravado. "Just passing by, farmer," Garrick called back, attempting to conjure a casual demeanor. But Eamon saw right through it. He took a single step forward, his pitchfork a spear of courage between him and the encroaching danger. "You stray too far into my land," Eamon said, the vibration of his words sending ripples through the stillness. There was no tremor in his voice, only the raw power of a man fighting for his very existence. Garrick smirked, brushing off the gravity of the situation. "You think you can scare us, old man? Let go of those foolish ideas." He beckoned to his companions, a sinister grin slithering across his face. The others laughed, emboldened by his words, but Eamon stood firm. "I'll not let you rob me of my hard work," he declared, unwavering. Eamon's heart raced, but he remained resolute, refusing to back down. In that moment, he wasn't just a farmer, he was a lion defending his pride. The tension thickened like storm clouds gathering for a fight. The rogues tightened around their leader, uncertainty creeping into their bravado. Eamon lunged forward, muscles tense, ready to confront the threat head-on. Garrick's grin faded, replaced with a flicker of hesitation. A part of him respected the farmer's tenacity, but greed clawed at him, pushing him to command his crew forward. "You think you're brave, but we're more than you alone can handle," he roared. But Eamon was prepared. His body had been honed by years of toiling in the fields. With the pitchfork grasped tightly, he took a calculated stance, ready to protect his home. One rogue charged at him, swinging a crude wooden club, but Eamon ducked, his instincts guiding him like a well-practiced dance. He thrust forward and the pitchfork met its mark, sending the rogue stumbling back, pained and shocked. Garrick spat, his voice growing more desperate as waves of his crew faltered before Eamon's unexpected ferocity. Just as the second rogue lunged, Eamon pivoted sharply, his resolve fueling a swift kick that sent his attacker sprawling into the mud. The fight was raw and unrefined, smoke and adrenaline entwined in a sinister ballet. Eamon maneuvered like a seasoned fighter, dodging, defending, moving with a mix of urgency and purpose. With every clash of weapon against weapon, he was not just defending his crops but honoring the toil that brought them to life. The remaining rogues glanced at one another, unease creeping in. They had expected an easy target, but this farmer was proving to be a different beast entirely. One rogue stumbled backward, landing flat on his back, eyes wide with disbelief. He cried, the fight draining from him. Garrick's fury surged. But even as he shouted, doubt gnawed at his insides and the resolve of his companions began to waver. Eamon pressed forward, a wildfire, igniting their fear with every swing of his pitchfork. Eamon bellowed, each word laced with the fire of his ancestors, the spirits of farmers before him who had fought similar battles. The shadows of the rogues flickered, wavering like candle flames about to be snuffed out. Their confidence cracked like brittle wood. One by one they retreated, the allure of easy riches swallowed by the reality of Eamon's strength. They scattered like leaves in the wind, fleeing into the night, their laughter turned to gasps of fear. Eamon stood amidst the silence, chest heaving as adrenaline coursed through him. The moon painted his figure in silver, a guardian of his land. Waves of disbelief washed over him as he processed what had just unfolded. He had faced shadows and emerged unscathed. As the first light of dawn broke through the horizon, it didn't just illuminate the farmer's fields. It encased Eamon in a golden glow, casting the image of a protector, the farmer who refused to allow darkness to steal away his dreams. He dropped the pitchfork, knees buckling slightly, fatigue washing over him like a tide. In that still moment, he reflected on the raw connection he felt with every inch of soil, every crop that lay beneath the sun. Those fleeting moments of fear had transformed him, not just as the man who toiled daily, but as a warrior for what he cherished. He could have lost everything in the fight against the rogues, but there lay a power within him that refused to yield to greed, the unbreakable spirit of a man clinging fiercely to his purpose. Days later, the valley returned to its peaceful rhythm, the rogues' threat fading into folklore. Yet Eamon remained vigilant. He planted his seeds with newfound resolve, tending to his fields with the proud spirit of a protector. His laughter echoed anew, filling the land with hope. As he worked, he educated the children in the surrounding villages, teaching them about the power of standing for what is right and cherishing the bonds formed through hard work. When shadows of doubt threatened to rise again, Eamon was not just a farmer. He was a reminder that strength and courage are born from the simplest things, an unwavering belief in oneself, deep-rooted connections to the land, and a will to rise with the dawn, ready to protect home and heart from whatever darkness may come. The night was eerily still, moonlight casting long shadows across the sprawling fields of green. In the heart of the valley, a small farmhouse stood proudly, the chimney gently puffing smoke into the cool air. Inside, Farmer Eamon was winding down after another long day, blissfully unaware of the darkness creeping towards his doorstep. It was said among the townsfolk that rogues roamed the nearby woods, desperate souls, hungry for riches, willing to take what wasn't theirs. But Eamon had always trusted the quiet of his land. Tonight, however, trust would be tested. As the clock struck midnight, three figures emerged from the trees, drifting closer, cloaked in shadows. They moved like wraiths, each footfall silently crunching grass beneath their boots. The leader, a man named Garrick, scanned the ground with eyes glinting in the moonlight, hungry for what Eamon had worked hard for. "Look at it," Garrick whispered, barely able to contain his excitement. "All that food, all that gold just waiting for us." The other two rogues nodded, their faces betraying a mix of greed and fear. They had stolen before, but Eamon's farm was different. Tales of the farmer's fierce spirit floated through the taverns, warning would-be thieves about the wrath that awaited them. But in their desperation, the rogues brushed those warnings aside. Meanwhile, Eamon felt an unsettling chill crawl down his spine. It wasn't just the cool mountain air sending shivers through his bones. It was instinct. He turned, glancing toward the window, and caught sight of movement along the edge of the field. The shadows felt alive, pulse quickening in the silence of night. Gathering his courage, he pulled open his back door. The creak of the wood broke the stillness like a gunshot, catching the rogues off guard. Eamon stood tall, his silhouette framed by the warm glow from inside. If they wanted his land, they would have to face him, and he would not go down without a fight. He called out, voice steady but demanding. The words hung in the air, thick with defiance. Garrick stepped forward, feigning confidence. Just passing through, farmer. There was a nervousness beneath his bravado, an undertow of fear threatening to drown him. Eamon let a smile flicker across his face. You think I can be fooled by your lies? This land has been tended with sweat and care. The words hung heavy as Garrick exchanged glances with his companions. What was supposed to be an easy theft suddenly felt like a thunderstorm gathering over their heads. They could back off now, turn and run. But the thought of warm food and easy wealth kept them rooted, desire overpowering their better judgment. One of the rogues, young, with fear written all over his face, took a step back. Maybe we should leave, Garrick. But Garrick was fueled by pride. We'll take what we came for. He clenched his jaw, steeling himself and his crew. He shouted, drawing a rusty dagger from his belt, the blade glimmering ominously in the moonlight. The other two rogues, albeit with reservations, followed suit, brandishing makeshift weapons of their own. But Eamon was no ordinary farmer. He had spent years wielding tools in the fields, his pitchfork as deadly as any dagger. The air around them thickened with tension. Eamon gripped his pitchfork tightly, muscles tensing as the rogues advanced. He was outnumbered but not outmatched. The fire in his heart burned brighter than any fear that threatened to engulf him. He commanded, taking a fierce step forward, his voice ringing clear. He felt the cool metal of the pitchfork against his palms, a symbol of everything he protected. With a sudden rush, the rogues lunged, adrenaline fueling their hurried movements. But what they hadn't anticipated was Eamon's fierce resolve. He dodged the first attack, swinging his fork with precision, catching a rogue in the leg and sending him sprawling. A cry pierced the night air, and with it, a wave of panic washed over the others. Garrick shouted, scrambling over his fallen friend. But Eamon wasn't done. He moved with the grace of a farmer who knew the rhythm of his land, his every instinct awakened. As two rogues exchanged glances, uncertainty clouding their expressions, Eamon seized the moment. He lunged forward, pitchfork aimed like a soldier's spear. It struck with purpose, narrowly missing Garrick but sending a message clear enough to shake their stubborn resolve. Garrick yelled, but his voice trembled, doubt creeping in. His companions hesitated, minds racing. The night was rich with the palpable tension of the battle, lit by the silvery moon above. As they closed in, Eamon tactically backed away, readying himself for their next attack. Fear coursed through the rogues. This farmer was not the meek man they had assumed. He was determined. He had spirit. Heightened instincts flooded Eamon's senses. He saw one rogue lunging, knife glinting with intent. Heart racing, he sidestepped, the farmer's reflexes guiding him. The rogue stumbled, and in that split second, Eamon struck back, the pitchfork striking true and hard. The rogue cried out, disbelief etched into his expression as he fell to the ground, clutching his side. The remaining rogue's face, drained of color, fear overtook him, and not a moment too soon. He turned to flee, abandoning the fight. It was a breaking point. Faced with the sight of their fallen comrade and the might of the farmer, Garrick's resolve crumbled. "We can't win," he stammered, eyes darting between Eamon and the woods where escape lay. A profound silence enveloped the battlefield. Eamon stood, breath heaving, watching as the last rogue turned to bolt into the night. They hadn't just lost a fight, they had lost their fire. Their dreams of easy riches vanished into the shadows they emerged from. With the rogues gone, Eamon felt the weight of the moment settle around him, a thick silence following the storm. Adrenaline still coursing through his veins, he stepped back, catching his breath. An unexpected sense of victory surged within him. He had defended not just his land, but everything it stood for, their struggles, their pain, and their legacy. The sun began to rise, painting the sky with shades of crimson and gold. Eamon looked out over his fields, the rows of crops swaying gently in the breeze. He felt a deep connection to the soil, to the fruits of his labor, and to the spirit of all the farmers who had come before him. He dropped to his knees in the damp earth, feeling the coolness seep through his worn trousers, grounding him. There was peace in knowing he had stood his ground, knowing he had faced darkness and emerged into the light. Eamon knew he wouldn't forget this night. The echoes of the rogues would serve as a reminder. There would always be shadows, but they would never take his spirit. In the days that followed, Eamon shared the story of that confrontation in the village tavern. Each retelling stoked the flames of community. It became a parable of strength, the farmer who defended his land, who fought not just for crops but for dignity. More than that, he inspired others to stand firm in their lives, to fight for what they cherished. The tale of Eamon's battle against greed and desperation spread, growing deeper roots in the hearts of those who heard it. And as seasons turned, more crops flourished. Each harvest painted reflections of the battles fought not just within the fields but within one's soul. It was a delicate dance between labor and reward, not merely an obligation but a treasure to be cherished, a ritual that bound everyone together. In the years that followed, whenever a rogue was mentioned, there would be heads turning with acknowledgement and pride. Eamon's courage and tenacity lived long in the hearts and minds of his community, a conduit through which they drew strength. Darkness might dance at the edges of the light, but it was the spirit of the farmer, kind, fierce, and unyielding, that would always shine bright, leading the way through both shadow and sun. The chilling howl of wolves echoed through the night as the moon hung high, casting silver beams across the landscape. Somewhere in the depths of a thick forest, shadows moved with an unsettling silence. 3 figures made their way through the trees, their breath visible in the frigid air, eyes narrowed with greed. They were rogues, hunters of opportunity, prowling for an easy score. They had heard tales of a farmer whose fields overflowed with ripe crops, an oasis of abundance in a world that had dealt them nothing but hardship. "Tonight we feast," Garrick said, his voice low and gravelly. He was the leader of this band of renegades, his expression twisted with the hunger for wealth. The shadows flanking him nodded, their faces obscured but eyes shining with malice. One asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. The thought of a confrontation filled them with dread. Eamon, the farmer they had spoken of, was known in the nearby villages as a man with the strength of a mountain. He had built his life from the very soil that nourished his crops, a hard-working man with a fierce spirit. "He's just a farmer." Garrick brushed aside the fear, fury igniting his confidence. "We move now." Meanwhile, inside the comforting walls of his cottage, Eamon sat beside the hearth, the warm glow dancing around him. He had lived through many seasons, his hands calloused and seasoned by years of tilling the land. Sunday's golden sun brought promises of a fruitful harvest, but tonight, unease stirred in his gut as he inspected the shackles of his old tools. Something felt off. In that stillness, a noise disrupted the crunching of leaves, a whisper of movement near the edge of the property. The rhythmic sounds of the natural world fell silent. Eamon stood, his heart racing. Grabbing a lantern, he stepped outside, the night air chilling him to the bone. What met his eyes sent electricity zipping through his veins, figures creeping closer to the crops that he had nurtured. He cast the lantern around, illuminating their menacing shapes. He called out fiercely, squaring his shoulders. The rogues froze, taken aback by the sudden disturbance. Garrick stepped forward, a smirk on his lips, attempting to mask his own surprise with bravado. "Easy there, old man, just looking for a way to borrow some food," he sneered, drawing confidence from the shadows behind him. Eamon's voice rang like thunder in the night. "You mean steal?" The rogues shared a look, assessing Eamon's resolve. They had thought him a mere farmer, but the flames of defiance flickering in his eyes ignited something deeper within each of them, a hint of uncertainty mingling with their greed. Eamon shouted, wielding a pitchfork with the assurance of a man who had nothing left to lose. With his weathered hand, he gripped the tool tightly, the metal gleaming ominously in the moonlight. Garrick's bravado faltered for a fleeting moment. "You think you can scare us?" He brandished his dagger, a crude knife that looked more menacing than effective. Eamon's heartbeat thrummed in his ears as he faced them, the cool metal of his pitchfork grounding him. "You don't know who you're messing with. This land is sacred to me." With the unyielding spirit of his ancestors rushing through his veins, Eamon took a step forward. The rogues began to close in, but he held his ground. The tension crackled in the air, thick enough to choke on. With a guttural growl, Garrick lunged, desperate to prove his threat. But Eamon was ready. He sidestepped the attack, swinging his pitchfork to meet the incoming rogue. The blade caught the man's arm, sending him crashing to the ground, gasping in pain. Fear flashed in the eyes of the remaining rogues, uncertainty paralyzing their next move. One shouted, the thrill of danger suddenly too much to bear, but Garrick, consumed by anger, rallied the troops. With a newfound ferocity, Eamon pressed the attack, each thrust of his pitchfork bearing the weight of years spent tilling the soil. "You want a piece of this land?" Garrick's face twisted in rage. He charged again, desperate and undeterred, but Eamon's movements were fluid and practiced. The pitchfork met the dagger, a loud clang cutting through the night. The clash echoed, punctuated by Garrick's grunt as he tumbled backward. Breathing heavily, Eamon felt rage and fear mingle within him, turning him into an unstoppable force. The very ground beneath his feet pulsed with his determination, and the ethereal strength of generations echoed in his bones. Each swing of the fork became not just a defense, but an assertion of what he valued: the crops, the land, his legacy. As Garrick fought to regain his footing, a moment of hesitation gripped him. He turned to his companions, and in that instant they lost all semblance of credential. The remaining rogue dashed toward the cover of the trees, leaving his leader to fend for himself. The other followed suit, heart racing with their escape. Eamon's grip tightened around the pitchfork. This was not just a fight, it was a battle for his very soul. He pressed on, charging at Garrick. Desperation clouded Garrick's judgment. He growled, swinging wildly. But this time, Eamon dodged, fluidly stepping aside, planting a firm foot in the earth as solid as his spirit. Summoning every ounce of strength, Eamon thrust the pitchfork, sending it through the air like a beacon of defiance. It stopped inches from Garrick's chest, the rogue's eyes widening in sheer terror. Surrounded by the remnants of his pride and the screaming silence of the night, Garrick realized he was cornered, caught between the ferocity of a man defending his life's work and the repercussions of his ill intentions. Eamon bellowed, voice sharp enough to cut through the night. The fierce determination in his gaze bore into Garrick's very soul, causing him to step back, panic flooding his veins. One glance around confirmed the retreat of his companions. The rogues wanted no part in this battle anymore. With a final desperate push, Garrick turned on his heel and fled into the woods, swallowed by the darkness. It was a moment laden with surrender. The shadows that had once cloaked him now burdened him with shame. Eamon stood there, panting, the adrenaline coursing through his body, a wildfire of victory igniting his spirit. He had defended not just his crops, but all the very essence of his labor, the foundation of every dream he had ever nurtured. He dropped the pitchfork, weak legs finally buckling beneath him. The moon cast a soft glow over his fields, illuminating the patchwork of earth that he had nourished. He dropped to his knees, taking in the smell of the damp soil as tears trickled down his dirt-streaked face. It was not just a fight one, it was a testament to resilience. The echoes of the night whirled around him, mingling with the voices of all the farmers who had come before him. As dawn broke, pouring a golden light over the land, Eamon rose and surveyed the aftermath. The crops stood untouched, mere shadows of the battle still lingering in the air. The rogues' threats had evaporated with the sun, but their message remained imprinted in Eamon's heart. This land was worth fighting for. With a renewed sense of purpose, Eamon began to grow his roots deeper into the community. The tales of that night spread, carried by whispers in the wind. Locals spoke of a farmer who had bravely defended his livelihood, their admiration fueled by the fire of his story. Days turned into weeks and weeks into seasons, yet the memories lingered, each harvest an echo of strength and resilience. Eamon became not just a farmer but a symbol. He taught children the value of hard work, instilling in them not just a relationship with the land but a deep respect for the struggles that shaped their lives. When rogues were mentioned in the village, heads nodded, recalling the night when courage conquered the darkness. Eamon's tale transformed into a lifeline for others, a narrative that empowered rather than dulled spirits. Years later, as Eamon looked out over his thriving fields, he remembered that night vividly, how it had forged a bond with the land deeper than he could have ever imagined. He still kept the pitchfork, a reminder of the battle he had fought and won. It now stood in the corner of his barn, a sentinel watching over the heart of his home, and as bright as any star in the dark night sky. Old tales are shared over fires, stories of bravery woven into the fabric of the village. And deep down, Eamon knew that as long as there were those willing to stand against greed and darkness, the spirit of the land would thrive eternally. The cold, moonlit night settled over the valley, a serene blanket draped across the rolling hills. But there was nothing peaceful in the hearts of the three rogues moving stealthily through the underbrush, drawn by greed and the thrill of a ripe target. They had heard whispers in the village tavern of a farmer named Eamon, known for his lush fields and hardy crops, an isolated paradise just waiting to be plundered. "Tonight's the night we finally feast," Garrick, the leader of the pack, hissed through clenched teeth. His eyes glimmered with anticipation, reflecting the moonlight like a predator stalking prey. The others nodded, excitement threading through their veins, but underneath their bravado lurked anxiety. They had stolen from the unsuspecting before, but Eamon was no ordinary target. Tales of his fierce determination and unwavering spirit buzzed around campfires. "Everyone says he won't back down easily," whispered a younger rogue, his voice trembling. Garrick brushed aside their worries. "What's a farmer compared to us?" As they crept toward Eamon's fields, shadows danced among the trees, stirred by the wind. The smell of fresh earth mixed with the sweet scent of ripe crops wafted on the gentle breeze, seducing their senses. They pictured all the riches, the food, the gold, all within their grasp, but they were not prepared for the fire in Eamon's heart. Inside the sturdy cottage, Eamon finished a long day of work, his calloused hands resting on the table, rough wood a testimony to the toil he had poured into the land. A flickering candle cast shadows against the walls, cradling him in its warm embrace. But tonight, a shiver ran up his spine, an instinctive warning prickling at the edges of his consciousness. Something felt wrong. He glanced toward the window, where moonlight spilled in, illuminating the darkened fields. Eamon knew every inch of his land, and an uninvited presence disturbed its sacred calm. He grabbed an old lantern, his heart pounding a steady rhythm against his ribs, and pushed open the door. The cold air rushed in, sharp against his skin, but he felt an urgent warmth rise within him, the protective instinct of a man who had nurtured this land through storms and years of sweat. He called, voice steady and fierce, echoing into the night. The rogues froze, momentarily startled. Garrick shouted back, shimmering bravado masking a flicker of fear. But Eamon's grip on his lantern tightened. Bitterness flashed in his eyes. "You're lying. I can see you lurking in the dark." Garrick took a step forward, grasping a dagger with a trembling hand. "You think you can scare us, old man?" The sound of his voice rang with bravado, but in his heart, uncertainty twisted. The aura emanating from Eamon was more intimidating than he had anticipated. The farmer stood with unwavering resolve, pitchfork at the ready, the lantern's glow casting a fierce shadow. Eamon's voice was grave, resolute. "You've already stepped too far." The world around them fell silent, the tension thick enough to slice. Garrick's bravado faltered slightly, yet he rallied his men. With a sudden lurch, the rogues charged forward. Eamon's heart raced, adrenaline igniting his senses. He pivoted skillfully, dodging the first attack. A mudded dagger swung wildly. In the heat of the moment, he struck back, launching the pitchfork with purpose, catching one rogue square in the chest. The man fell, yelping in surprise and pain. The command slipped from the lips of the second rogue, panic lighting his eyes, but Garrick pushed forward, a mixture of anger and fear transforming his features. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They had never anticipated such fierce resistance. Eamon stood tall, the weight of his ancestors surging within him. Each thrust of the pitchfork held the echoes of countless farmers before him, souls who had fought for their harvests and homes. This wasn't just about crops, it was about spirit. The second rogue flinched, his courage wavering. Instinctively, he stepped back. Garrick hissed, desperation creeping into his voice. "We can't show fear." But as they faced Eamon again, uncertainty loomed larger than ever. Eamon pivoted, movements sharp and decisive, channeling all the years of toil and heartache into a single, blazing resolve. He swung the pitchfork toward Garrick, narrowly missing but forcing him to stumble back. The weight of the oncoming attack pressed against him like a stampede. With a primal roar, Eamon drove his pitchfork into the muddy ground, anchoring himself to the land he cherished. He thundered, voice resonating with power that shook the very earth beneath them. Garrick faltered, glancing at his accomplices, who now stared wide-eyed at Eamon. The fire within the farmer, ignited by desperation and love for his home, was more terrifying than any shadow that lurked in the woods. Eamon called, infused with an energy desperate and raw. He charged forward, muscular arms swinging the pitchfork with all his strength, determination burning in his chest. The remaining rogue spun to flee, desperation overtaking his senses. As they broke free from confrontation, Eamon refused to relent. The sound of his voice chased them, a last echo resonating through the trees. With each step backward, Garrick felt the sting of shame, fear turning his bravado to dust. They fled into the darkness, the night swallowing their figures whole, leaving Eamon standing alone. Breathing heavily, heart pounding, he dropped the pitchfork to the ground, sunlight beginning to seep into the world around him. In that moment, peace settled over him, washing away the adrenaline and fear. He looked out across his fields, the crops standing strong and resilient just like him. It was a hard-won victory, a testament to the spirit that resided within the simple life of a farmer. Days turned to weeks, and the village buzzed with tales of Eamon's battle against the rogues. They spoke of his fearlessness, his unwavering spirit that had faced darkness and emerged triumphant. People began to gather around the fire in the evenings, recounting the story of the farmer who defended his land, inspiring the younger generations to cultivate both crops and courage. Eamon felt the weight of responsibility settle comfortably on his shoulders. He wasn't just farming for himself anymore. He was nurturing the spirit of resilience, a legacy woven into the very soil. Each young bud sprouting from the earth became a reminder of the resilience that flourished not just in fields, but in hearts. With every harvest, Eamon shared his bounty, inviting villagers into his home. Food stretched across tables, laughter mingled with the smells of fresh bread and roasted vegetables. They spoke of their hopes, dreams, and the strength they found in each other. One evening, as Eamon watched children play in the fields, he felt a warmth envelop him, a sense of purpose stronger than any threat that may come. The future bloomed with promise, each seed planted serving as a reminder that life could be nurtured and sustained against all odds. Whispers of the rogues faded into the distance, their names slipping from memory. They became mere shadows of the past, an echo lost among the tales shared over long evenings. But Eamon remained vigilant, ready to defend his legacy should the need arise again. And beneath the stars, the stories of the brave farmer became interwoven with the land, each harvest a symbol of the battles fought and won, not just against rogues, but against the darkness lurking in every heart that dared to dream. Being a farmer was more than cultivation. It was a commitment to nurturing life and standing steadfast against the storm. As the seasons changed, Eamon continued to sow not only crops but confidence within his community. He taught them to stand for what they valued, to tend to their hopes with the same care they offered the earth. Together, they cultivated a landscape rich in strength and resilience, a testament to the human spirit. All across the valley, farmers lifted their heads high with pride, knowing they belonged to something greater. Eamon's tale of bravery, a small spark that ignited a fierce blaze, reminded them that when faced with darkness, those who stand together can cultivate not just fields, but courage itself. In this land of storms, shadows, and light, hope blossomed in every heart. In the stillness of a moonlit night, hidden in the folds of an ancient valley. Shadows moved with purposeful figures cloaked in darkness, driven by desperation and greed. They were rogues, known in whispers among villagers for their brazen acts, always looking for the next treasure to claim as their own. Tonight, their eyes were set on a humble farmer named Eamon, whose land was a patchwork of bountiful crops and hard-earned tranquility. "Look at that," Garrick, the leader, whispered, eyes glinting in the dark. "With just one sweep, we take everything he's worked for." The others nodded, excitement bubbling just under the surface, but a flicker of uncertainty darted through them like a sudden gust of wind. One of them murmured, the sound barely escaping his lips. Garrick scoffed, rubbing his dagger as if it were a talisman. "He's just a farmer." Meanwhile, inside a cozy, modest cabin, Eamon settled down by the crackling fireplace, the warm glow enveloping him like a trusted friend. The day had been long, filled with backbreaking labor and the joy of planting seeds that would one day become sustenance. Yet tonight, as he prepared for sleep, a shiver raced up his spine, an instinctual warning that something was amiss. He glanced toward the window just in time to see flickers of movement near the edge of his land. His pulse quickened, a feeling he couldn't shake. He grabbed an old lantern, the glass scratched and worn, and swung open the door, the cold air biting into his skin like 1,000 tiny needles. Eamon's voice cut through the silence, firm and commanding, echoing as though it belonged to the land itself. The rogues froze, their sinful intentions momentarily put on hold. Garrick called out, trying to sound casual though his heart raced. Eamon narrowed his eyes, lantern light casting an aura around him. "You're not here to pass through. I can see it in your eyes." The rogue turned to the others, a mixture of defiance and doubt darkening his expression. "We're not afraid of one old farmer," Garrick said, a tremor flickering beneath his bravado. But Eamon suddenly stepped forward, the flame of determination igniting behind his gaze. "Then you'll have to answer for your greed," Eamon declared, raising his lantern high. With that, the air thickened with tension. The rogues hesitated, exchanging glances filled with uncertainty. But desperation clawed at them. They needed to take what they believed was easier than working for it. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Garrick lunged at Eamon, dagger gleaming wickedly in the moonlight. Time slowed as Eamon sidestepped, dodging the attack with the agility born from years spent tending to the land. He struck back with the lantern, the glass clinking as it connected with Garrick's arm, causing him to stumble. Eamon roared, heart racing. He grabbed a nearby pitchfork, feeling the weight and history of the tool in his hands, the relic of generations of farmers who had come before him. The remaining rogues swallowed hard. Eamon stood tall, eyes blazing as he brandished the pitchfork, ready to protect his home. With adrenaline pumping through his veins, he felt the strength of the earth beneath him, a connection that transcended fear. Garrick shouted, his voice hoarse with rising panic. The two rogues charged Eamon from either side, but he was quick and resolute. He jabbed the pitchfork forward, catching one rogue in the chest, sending him sprawling back into the brush with a pained gasp. The other shouted, panic twisting his features, but Garrick pressed on, fueled by a mixture of rage and desperation. Eamon could hear the wild thump of his heart in his ears, fueled by the electric camaraderie of a man fighting for his very soul. Eamon shouted, turning his focus entirely on Garrick. Garrick lunged again, but this time Eamon was ready. He sidestepped once more, feeling the air shift as he swung the pitchfork with powerful intent, aiming not just to defend, but to reclaim a piece of his dignity. With a loud clash, the pitchfork met the dagger, metal grinding together like dissonant notes in a haunting melody. Eamon yelled, pressing forward, refusing to be intimidated. The sheer force of Eamon's resolve shook Garrick, his grip slipping as his face twisted with frustration. In that moment, the fear that had danced beneath the surface rose to the forefront. Garrick shouted, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. The fight had sputtered, fumes of anger morphing into terror. Feeling the momentum shift, Eamon pressed on, a whirlwind of rebellion ignited by the fire of countless generations before him. He bellowed, every word a fierce protection of the ground beneath him. With shadows lingering in their wake, the remaining rogue turned to flee, disappearing into the night, leaving Garrick behind. He shouted, fury consuming his words. But even Garrick could taste the salt of fear on his tongue, the adrenaline fading like a distant echo. The fight drained from Garrick's stance, uncertainty flooding his heart as he assessed the farmer's unwavering spirit. Eamon stood, pitchfork pointed firmly toward the ground, breathing heavily, feeling strength course through him. He had stood his ground, he had fought for what was his. "Get out," Eamon warned, voice steady and low. Garrick hesitated but ultimately turned and fled into the dark woods, leaving Eamon standing victorious. The silence that followed was profound, the night still spinning around him, clouds of tension dissipating like morning mist. Breathing heavily, he dropped to his knees, the weight of the pitchfork sinking into the earth beneath him. In that moment, Eamon felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over him. He wasn't just a farmer. He was a protector, a guardian of the land that had given him life and love. The moon's gentle glow bathed him, illuminating the world around him as the weight of triumph settled comfortably into his bones. In the days that followed, whispers of Eamon's bravery swept through the village. Tales of the farmer who defended his land surged with every retelling, flickering like lantern flames in the hearts of those who had heard them. Villagers began gathering around their fires, sharing the story time and again, the flickered embers infusing their spirits with hope. Eamon reveled in the quiet revival of community pouring into his life. He could hardly recall a time when laughter didn't flow freely in his small cottage. Children played in his fields, knowing the security of a farmer who had faced darkness and emerged victorious. His strength radiated through the village like the sun breaking through a storm. He held teachings every Saturday, gathering the children beneath the shade of an old oak tree, recounting tales not just of bravery but of resilience, of standing firm against adversity. "The strength lies not only in our hands but in our hearts," he told them, echoing wisdom whose roots ran deep. As seasons shifted, crops flourished, their vibrant colors a testament to the land's richness. Eamon nurtured a sense of pride among the villagers, everyone working until sunset, through laughter and shared meals. Projecting hope filled every corner, while memories of that fateful night, the night the rogues had tried to invade his sanctuary, became a piece of folklore. The rogues themselves became tales of caution, reminders of what greed could bring. In taverns, villagers would speak of the audacity of those who dared to take what wasn't theirs, an echo of the challenge Eamon faced, a mark on history that would not be easily forgotten. Someone once dared to ask during a gathering, but Eamon smiled, eyes bright with fire. "Let them come. Every man has his breaking point, and I will stand firm to protect what's mine." Years floated by like clouds in the blue sky above. Eamon grew older, but the spirit of resilience never waned. He passed down not just his methods of farming, but instilled within others the importance of standing against injustice, whether that came in the shape of rogues or anything else that sought to strip away their dignity and hard work. And under the very same stars that had once cast their glimmering gaze upon a desperate fight, the village continued to thrive. Eamon had cultivated not only crops but a thriving community that stood together in the face of darkness. As he sat amidst his cherished fields, the sun sinking low, bathing the world in gold, he knew that the fight he had faced was never destined to be his alone. It would live on through every person who dared to stand proud and protect their piece of earth. The laughter of children echoed in the distant air, a promise of resilience ringing true. And deep down, Eamon understood one fundamental truth that would outlast him: the spirit of courage could never be taken. It could only be grown, cherished, and passed down to every generation. In the quiet of the valley, darkness could try to climb its way back, but for every thief that lurked, a heart would rise, fiercely guarding what was rightfully theirs. The moon hung low and heavy in the sky, casting an eerie glow over a sprawling field of corn, each stalk swaying gently in the night breeze. In the heart of an isolated valley, there stood a humble farmhouse, Eamon's farmhouse. It had been a long day of labor, and Eamon, with his weathered hands and sun-kissed skin, was finally winding down. Yet tonight felt different. A chill lingered in the air, one that sent a shiver down his spine. The silence around him seemed too quiet, as if the entire world held its breath. Eamon shook the feeling off and sat down to enjoy a simple meal. Just as he began to eat, he heard it, a soft rustling outside. He frowned, setting down his fork. Probably just a rabbit, he murmured to himself, trying to push aside the nagging feeling of unease. But the rustling grew louder, accompanied by hushed voices. Eamon stood up, heart racing. He moved to the window, peeking through the worn curtains. There, just beyond the reach of the moonlight, 3 shadowy figures crept toward his fields, barely visible among the cornstalks. A sense of dread settled in his stomach. "With just a little luck, tonight we feast," one voice growled, thick with anticipation. Eamon's heart sank. They were roguesmen who took what they wanted without a second thought. He recognized the tone from the tavern gossip, tales about vagabonds who roamed nearby, taking advantage of the kind-hearted. But Eamon had never thought they would come for him. He grabbed his trusty pitchfork, the metal still gleaming from years of hard work. It was not just a tool, it was an extension of himself, an emblem of his resolve. He wouldn't let anyone strip away what he had fought so hard to build. With determination burning in his chest, Eamon stepped outside. He called, his voice loud and steady, slicing through the night like a knife. The rogues froze, surprise flickering across their faces. One of them spat, trying to regain his composure. "I'll fight for what's mine," Eamon declared, gripping the pitchfork tighter, his gaze unwavering. Every inch of his land held memory, sweat, toil, dreams, and he would defend it to the last breath. In a heartbeat, they laughed, confidence rising like smoke. "You think you can take us on alone?" Garrick, the leader, stepped forward, dagger glinting in the moonlight as though it were an extension of his arrogance. The challenge sent a rush of adrenaline through Eamon. "You underestimate me," he replied, standing tall like an oak tree in a storm, a fierce resolve roaring to life inside him. Shadows danced around them, tension coiling tighter and tighter. Eamon's heart pounded in rhythm with the pulse of the earth beneath his feet. Garrick and his companions exchanged hurried glances, uncertainty beginning to seep through their bravado. But desperation is a powerful motivator. Garrick shouted, lunging forward, dagger aimed at Eamon's side. The air thickened with imminent danger. Eamon sidestepped, instincts honed by years of working the land guiding him. He swung the pitchfork with precision, but it wasn't just a tool. It was a promise to protect his legacy. The blade knocked the dagger from Garrick's grip with a resounding clang, sending it spinning into the dirt. Eamon seized the moment, thrusting the pitchfork toward Garrick's chest, just a breath away from contact. Garrick stumbled back, surprise flashing in his eyes. He screamed, but the fight began to drain from him. One of the other rogues, seeing their leader falter, turned to flee. He yelled, darting back toward the shadows of the trees, panic flooding his features. Garrick's shouts echoed in the night, encouraging weakness. "Stay, you fools!" But even as he barked orders, uncertainty painted his face. Eamon pressed his advantage, not giving them a moment to recover. "You chose to come here under the cover of night." His voice rose higher, the strength of his words propelling him forward. Suddenly, the third rogue turned tail, abandoning his comrades as shadows rushed back toward the cover of the forest. Eamon's heart soared. He wasn't just defending his land, he was sending a strong message. In that moment, it became clear, bravery had its price. Eamon taunted, a fire in his eyes. The wind whipped around them and Garrick was left standing alone, the weight of decision pressing heavily on his shoulders. He shouted, but even he saw the tide of battle shifting. The remaining rogue bolted, fear sparking his flight as Garrick faced the formidable farmer who now stood resolute against him. "You're outnumbered now," Eamon said, voice calm but potent, "and you've clearly underestimated me." Garrick hesitated. He could feel the intensity in Eamon's stance. It was unwavering, relentless. A quick glance to the fleeing rogue reminded Garrick of the cowardice creeping in among his crew. Swallowing hard, he glanced back toward Eamon. The fear and rage swirled within him, and suddenly the glimmer of greed that lured them to this land felt foolish, insufferable. With a roar that pierced the night, Garrick lunged, desperation fueling his attack. With the pitchfork in hand, Eamon parried, leveraging the strength of every inch of soil he had tilled, feeling the weight of generations behind him. He moved with tenacity, dodging and thrusting, fighting not just for himself, but for the community that had always stood together. A final jab of the pitchfork sent Garrick stumbling, panting heavily, regret deepening his stance. Garrick sputtered, confidence wavering like a flame in the wind. "The only prize you'll find is in your foolishness," Eamon concluded, determination unwavering. Defeat hung heavy in the air as Garrick glanced back at his escape route, then squared his shoulders, realizing that nothing could justify the battle against such an indomitable spirit. With one last look of defiance that faltered into resignation, Garrick turned and fled, breaking into a sprint toward the shadows that had first enticed him. The night swallowed him whole, leaving Eamon standing amidst the cool earth, breathless but victorious. The fight was over, but the heaviness of what had transpired pressed on his heart like an old sorrow. Dropping the pitchfork to the ground, Eamon allowed the adrenaline to subside. The moon illuminated the field, showcasing the remnants of what had almost been lost, a reminder of bravery born through struggle. Days turned into weeks, but the events of that fateful night clung to the village like smoke. Whispers buzzed in the tavern, stories exchanged over mugs of warm ale, tales of Eamon, the farmer who had faced down rogues without flinching. His courage became a beacon in the valley, igniting a flame of pride among villagers who had once lived in fear. Eamon himself wasn't just a farmer anymore. He was a symbol of resilience, and that night became folklore, a tale of standing tall when shadows threatened to consume light. As autumn approached, the fields transformed, corn turning from green to golden hues, each harvested ear a testament to hard work and devotion. Families gathered to collect the bounty, laughter ringing in the air. And from that point on, Eamon became not just a protector of his own land, but a guardian of community spirit. He shared his harvest freely with neighbors, filling their tables with the fruits of his labor, reminding them that strength lies not just in fighting back, but in the bonds forged through kindness and shared struggles. "Together," he often said, "we can make this valley thrive." With time, the villagers took comfort in the tales they spun around bonfires, evenings filled with warmth and camaraderie. Eamon's story flickered bright, illuminating their hearts, reminding them that bravery is sometimes not fighting alone but standing together. As the years drifted by like clouds in the sky, new generations grew, hearing the stories of Eamon, the farmer who would rise against darkness. Children played among the fields, losing themselves in dreams filled with courage spirits unafraid because they knew they carried a legacy of resilience. Even as Eamon aged, he remained a pillar in the village, strength rippling through him as he continued guiding others, nurturing both crops and character. And though the rogues faded from memory, their shadows still whispered in the hearts of those who refused to yield. They had become a cautionary tale, reminders of the power of greed, but also of unwavering strength. Deep in his heart, Eamon understood that though he might have fought for his life, it was the community, the friendships, the shared laughter and love that had truly won the day. Standing for what was right, for those who had fought alongside him, forged bonds that could never be broken. On the night of the harvest festival, as the stars braided the sky, Eamon stood by his home, watching laughter and joy unfold around him, the glow of lanterns illuminating the faces of friends and family. He turned his gaze toward the fields, a soft smile gracing his face. With unwavering spirit and tender resolve, he had learned one invaluable lesson, that true strength is not measured solely in battles fought, but in hearts united, courage shared, and legacies built upon kindness and resilience. And so, even as the world around him shifted, Eamon remained a steadfast guardian, embodying a truth that would echo through generations. No darkness could ever extinguish the light of those who stood together, ready to face whatever may come. As long as they were united, they would thrive, forever and always. The moon hung low, shrouded in swirling clouds, casting shadows over a winding dirt road. A chilling wind whispered through the trees as three figures cloaked in darkness sprinted toward the edge of a lush farm. Their hearts pounded with anticipation, a thrill mingled with desperation driving them onward. They were rogues, known in nearby towns for their brazen thefts, but tonight they had their sights set on something special, the bounty of Eamon's fields. Garrick, the leader, whispered, barely containing his excitement. His companions, faced with the decision to take what wasn't theirs, exchanged wary glances. Paranoia edged into the corners of their minds, but the pull of hunger was stronger. "He can't stop all of us," one of them said, voice laced with bravado. But the truth hung heavy in the air. The looming dread of confrontation gnawed at their core. Meanwhile, inside the modest yet sturdy farmhouse, Eamon sat by the crackling hearth, enjoying a well-earned meal after a long day of labor. His hands, calloused and worn, cradled a wooden bowl. There was a moment when everything felt right, until a chill spiraled through the air. A sudden noise pierced through the comforting crackle of the fire, drawing his attention to the window. "Just the wind," he murmured to himself, shaking off the unease settling in his gut. But instinct was a powerful force, and tonight it screamed at him. Then came the unmistakable sound of hushed voices, too close for comfort. Eamon rose, gripping his pitchfork tightly, its worn handle familiar and safe in his hands. He opened the door just enough to peep outside, seeing 3 shadowy figures creeping toward his fields, eyes glinting with a mix of greed and anticipation. The realization sparked a fire within him. He called, voice steady yet firm, shaking off the weariness that had settled in his bones. He didn't just feel a protector. Tonight, he felt like a guardian of everything he had built. The rogues froze at the sound of his voice, tension crackling in the air like a charged bolt of lightning. Garrick shouted back, attempting casual bravado, but his voice quivered with a hint of fear that Eamon caught immediately. "You're lying," Eamon countered, stepping into the light, pitchfork raised, defiance burning in his gaze. "You mean to steal from me?" A nervous laughter escaped Garrick's lips, but it lacked confidence. "What do you think you can do?" The taunt was desperate, but it only fueled Eamon's resolve. Eamon shouted, grounding himself, shifting into a protective stance. In that moment, he was no longer just a simple farmer. He embodied the heart and soul of every person who had ever had to defend their home. With a sudden rush, the rogues lunged at him. But Eamon, fueled by an intensity born from years of hard work and love for the land, ducked and danced, his instincts guiding him. The first rogue approached, swinging wildly, but Eamon's years in the fields had honed not just his body but also his reflexes. Eamon sidestepped and struck back, the heavy pitchfork slamming into the ground between him and the attacker. Eamon shouted, the defiance coursing through his veins. Garrick charged forward, panic eclipsing his earlier bravado. With a furious shout, he aimed his dagger at Eamon, but the farmer was quick, swinging the pitchfork to intercept the blade, the sound of metal clattering against metal vibrating through the night. Eamon pushed back, the sheer power of his will driving the rogue away. Eamon roared, feeling adrenaline surge as he prepared for the next wave of attacks. Another rogue lunged, weapon raised, but Eamon pivoted with a deftness that surprised even him. The pitchfork jabbed forward, hitting its mark and sending the rogue tumbling back in pain with a yelp. Garrick's face twisted in a mix of rage and disbelief as his remaining companion scrambled to his feet, now realizing that the odds had shifted dramatically. The once confident rogues now staggered, assessments etched in panic and despair. One stammered, backing away slowly. For Eamon, this fight represented not just his crops but the values he held dear: the sweat, the struggle, the hope for a future. He bellowed, glancing at the cowering rogue who had hesitated to attack again. Garrick's lips twisted, anger boiling beneath the surface, but the flicker of fear had wormed its way into his heart. "We can't retreat," he spat, lunging once more, but the intensity in Eamon's stance was unnerving, the pitchfork glimmering like a sword as it rose again to meet him. Eamon shouted back, "It's choosing greed over honor." With a final, desperate thrust, Garrick lunged at Eamon, but it was too late. Eamon, fueled by a strength and purpose he didn't know he had, countered the attack with a swift upward slice of the pitchfork. Its sharp prongs caught Garrick's dagger, forcing it out of his hand and sending it clattering to the ground. Garrick stumbled back, expression morphing from anger to horror. The remaining rogue, overwhelmed by the sight, turned on his heel. "I'm out," he muttered, running off into the trees, abandoning Garrick and their plan. Garrick shouted, his composure cracking as he turned to chase after his fleeing friend. But Eamon's yells echoed in the night, a final plea that paralyzed him. Eamon thundered, step by step, moving closer, pitchfork leading the way. With every inch Garrick took backward, the realization settled like an unwanted stone in his gut. He had underestimated the farmer. Desperation turned to resignation. Garrick hissed, retreating step by step until he too hiked up his legs and fled toward the shadows, feeling the weight of shame wrap around him like a cold shroud. Eamon stood there, breathing heavily, the adrenaline pulsing through him as he dropped the pitchfork to his side. The quiet returned, and he felt the coolness of night settle around him. He had fought not just for his crops, but for the spirit of his community, every piece of earth that told a story. Days passed, the moon waxed and waned. Eamon shared the tale of that confrontation with villagers gathered around the fireside, igniting inspiration in their hearts. They listened with rapt attention, eyes wide with admiration. Eamon had become a symbol not merely of resistance but of determination. He would say, inspiring them to fight against fear in their lives. Whispers of the rogues faded, tales of their cowardice overshadowed by the bravery of Eamon. He shared his bounty, collected from the fields, offering hope to those who struggled. Every meal turned into an act of defiance, a testament to the resilience that filled their hearts. But one night, as Eamon settled in for the evening, a jolt of instinct shot through him again. He sighed, trying to shake it off, but unsettling visions flitted through his mind, faces twisted with greed and shadows lingering just beyond the trees. He stepped outside, clutching his lantern, scanning the darkness that threatened to swallow the light. Then he saw them familiar silhouettes lurking, plotting under the cover of night. At this moment he realized they had returned asterisk. Eamon's heart raced not with fear but with a determination that burned brighter than before. This time he would not be taken by surprise. Eamon grabbed his pitchfork once again, the weight of it feeling like an old friend. He called into the darkness, voice steady, "I know you're there." Garrick emerged from the shadows, flanked by two new faces, hardened men whose eyes gleamed with malice. "We've come back for what we should have taken the first time," Garrick growled, voice low. His earlier defeat hadn't dulled his hunger for revenge. If anything, it fueled his ambition. The night air thickened, tension swirling like an errant wind. Eamon squared his body, determination surging within him. "You'll find I'm not an easy target." With a fierce charge, Eamon lunged, pitchfork aimed like a spear. The rogues surged forward, their cruel intentions ignited with vengeance, but their confidence betrayed them. As Eamon prepared for the clash, he felt the weight of history behind him, the voices of farmers long gone, the lessons learned from battles fought. "You may be rogues, but I am a protector," he shouted. And in that moment, everything hung in the balance: the promise of his fields, the lives intertwined with the land, and the courage he had ignited within himself and others. Defiance filled him as he stepped forward, prepared to face whatever darkness lurked ahead, knowing he would not face it alone. The challenge was set, and the air crackled, anticipation hanging like a storm cloud just before it breaks. This was only the beginning, and Eamon knew that the rogues wouldn't give up easy. As shadows danced uncertainly at the edges of the field, the stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything. Eamon's heart raced, filled with the promise of a fight that would test not just his strength but the very fabric of courage woven into the lives around him. And he was ready to stand firm and protect all he cherished, even if it meant facing the storm head-on.